Tens or even hundreds of thousands of years before the founding of the Galactic Republic, the galaxy was dominated by a mysterious species known as the Celestials, or Architects. Using the less powerful species of the galaxy as their servants, particularly three species known as the Gree, the Qua, and the Kilix, they were able to complete massive projects throughout the galaxy, building entire star systems, including Corellia and even the black hole cluster known as the Maw, using massive stations equipped with gigantic tractor beam projectors, then seeding these and many other naturally occurring systems with various species, including humans. Some of these humans on the planet which would come to be known as Coruscant formed the battalions of Zell and expelled the indigenous Tong species in a great war. 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, or BBY, the Gree ruled a vast empire, creating tech unmatched even in the modern galaxy, while the Colomai in the core used their own hyperdrive tech to survey planets occupied by the humans and Duros, among others. At some point before 36,000 BBY, the Rakatans were able to establish their infinite empire after fighting the Qua, another of the celestial servant species who traveled throughout the galaxy using infinity gates, which are a form of portal. The Infinite Empire and their constructs, including the Starforge, enslaved much of the galaxy yet again. By 30,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, they reached their apex, covering most of the galaxy. Relics of the Rakatans could be found located as widely spread as Lehon in the Unknown Regions, Dantooine, Honoghr, and Tatooine, covering 4 completely opposite points in the galaxy, although this included far fewer actual specific planets than many later civilizations would. Rakatan influence soon began to wane in the galaxy, while other species started their own rise to prominence in their own wars. Conflict between different Force-wielding sects gave rise to the Force Wars of Tython in 25,793 BBY, a hugely destructive, decade-long conflict which, by its end, saw the emergence of the Jedi Order, with further development of their philosophy happening on Ossus, including the conception of the dark and light sides of the Force, building on earlier concepts of the Bogan and the Ashla. By the year 25,200 BBY, the Infinite Empire had collapsed. Billions of Rakata had died from a plague, providing their slaves an opportunity to rise up. Eventually, this plague had mutated into a form which, while seemingly less fatal, denied the Rakatans access to the Force, which powered much of their tech, including their hyperdrives, leaving them stranded and their civilization devolving into a series of disconnected planets in the Unknown Regions, known in modern times as the Rakatan Archipelago. No longer under the control of the Rakata, the other species of the galaxy were able to continue development of their own technology and empires, particularly the humans, Duros, and Hutts. Humans on Coruscant began seeding nearby core worlds with sleeper ships, sending settlers to the worlds of Alsakan, Alderaan, Oxum, and other planets representing other letters of the alphabet, many of which were actually already occupied, including Alderaan and its native population of Kilix, the insectoid species who had formerly served as a labor force for the Celestials. Improvements in hyperdrive technology began linking the human civilizations of the core with the Duros colonies, and further reverse engineering of the Rakatan tech on Corellia allowed the humans and Duros to expand their contact even more. In another corner of the galaxy, yet another group of human colonists and alien cast-offs, known as the Tianese, began expanding their own territory. In 25,150 BBY, King Faris of Kron was deposed by King Zur of Argai. Zur's son Zim soon ruled as Zim the Despot, raiding local space and vastly expanding the reach of Tianese territory. His expansion was stopped by yet another fledgling empire to their south, the Hutts. The Hutts had recently bound many species including the Klatooinians and Nikto to their service with the Treaty of Vontor, pledging those species to a servitude which would come to last 25,000 years. The Third Battle of Vontor in 25,100 BBY saw the end of Tion's expansion. Zim's navy and powerful war droids were routed and shut down by Cossack the Hutt, who captured the so-called Pirate Prince Zim and imprisoned him until his death. 25,053 BBY became a year of huge significance in the galactic history. Advancement in hyperdrive tech had reduced trips within the core to a matter of days. These increasingly integrated core worlds began a loosely affiliated democratic union, the Galactic Republic. The Republic grew quickly while the former worlds of Zim fell into a millennium of infighting. The Jedi of Ossus became the protectors of the fledgling Republic and warned Coruscant against impending aggression from the Tianese and the Hutts, contact with whom had led to the two outlying civilizations believing that the core was a prime, resource-rich target for them to invade. The TNEs began wiping out Republic colonies on the fringe, prompting a massive mobilization in the Republic's industrial might. Republic agents embedded in Hutt space also incited the Hutts to invade their traditional enemies in Tion, and with the TNEs fighting an unsustainable war on two fronts, the Republic was easily able to sweep through Tion, denying the surrender of the last major world of the TNEs, Desevro, and sterilizing it entirely, integrating the rest of the former worlds of the Honorable Union of Desevro and Tion to the Republic. In the following period, the Republic continued its massive growth, peaking in the Great Manifest period of 20,000 to 17,000 BBY. This harmony wouldn't last forever though. Another planet, Alsakan, which was one of the earliest colonies of the core, sought to challenge Coruscant as the galactic capital. Following millennia of tension, they rebelled, ending the Great Manifest period and starting the first of the 17 Alsakan conflicts, a series of intermittent civil wars lasting for the next 14,000 years, covering a variety of different grievances, causes, and scales. These were hardly the only civil wars in the galaxy of the post-Manifest period, as what formerly had seemed like a wide-open galaxy began to close in. In 15,000 BBY, the Hutts engaged in their own civil war, the Hutt Cataclysms, a war so devastating it left their homeworld of Varl uninhabitable and caused the Hutts to eschew military force in favor of exerting their power financially and through the galactic criminal underworld instead. In the Republic, the year 11,965 began the millennia-long Pius Day Crusades, initiated by Chancellor Contis Bex I. The Contis Bex dynasty engaged in the Crusades to install human supremacy over aliens, purging what they called the irredeemable elements of society, coming in the wake of a Bothan Supreme Chancellor Perslia being impeached and assassinated. The Crusades were finally stopped with the Sixth Alsakan conflict, when the Jedi and other disaffected elements of the Republic teamed up with Alsakan to remove the Pius Day occult from power. The lead up from there to the year 7000 BBY saw the formation of two new enemies for the Republic. The Tong, who had been forced off Coruscant millennia before, had ventured from their adopted homeland of Rune and made their way to a new planet, where they fought giant creatures known as mythosaurs for domination of this planet. Their leader became known as Mandalore I, and began the early Mandalorian Crusades. At a similar time, a sect of Jedi emerged who sought the power of the dark side and dark side alchemy, going to war with the rest of the Jedi Order in the 100-Year Darkness. These Dark Jedi, or Gen Jedi, were defeated by the rest of the Jedi on the planet Korbos. Now led by a man named Ajunta Pall, they stumbled upon the planet of Korriban, where they became the rulers of a species called the Sith, who worshipped them as gods and became the backbone of their new Sith Empire. Over the following 2,000 years, they developed in isolation from the Republic. This all changed when the sibling navigator team of Gav and Jory Daragon stumbled onto Korriban during a power struggle between Lords Nagasato and Ludo Kresh, each hoping to replace the deceased Marka Ragnos and usher in the golden age of the Sith that Marka Ragnos had promised. Sato played to fears about the Republic scouts who had discovered them, crushed Kresh, and began his plans for an invasion of the Republic, the Great Hyperspace War of 5000 BBY. While Gav was seduced to the dark side, Jory headed to the Koros system, warning Empress Teta and her navy of the impending Sith raid. While Empress Teta petitioned the Republic for further military aid, Sato's forces arrived and quickly began to crush the Republic forces. The Republic was ultimately victorious, though Sato escaped in his flagship to the planet Yavin and put himself in a state of suspended animation, awaiting a new apprentice. He was discovered 600 years later, in 44 BBY, by a Jedi named Freda Nad, who had sought Sato's power. Nad took his new skills to the planet of Alderaan, installing himself as king in the walled city of Isis. His dynasty ruled imbued by his dark side powers until 4000 BBY, when his ruling descendant Queen Aminoa was deposed by the Jedi Master Arca Jeth. Aminoa's daughter Galia reformed the politics of the planet and removed Nod and her mother's remains to the moon of Duxin, where it was encased in Mandalorian Beskar, believing this would protect it from anyone who is trying to gain Nad's power for themselves. Despite these protections, yet another fallen Jedi, Exar Kun, managed to break into Freda Nad's tomb, and was taught to use the dark side by his spirit. Kun, now calling himself the Dark Lord of the Sith, began his own plans to invade the Republic. Supported by the Dark Jedi Ulic Qel-Droma and his forces from the now corrupt Empress Teta system known as the Krath, as well as the Mandalorian Crusaders, Exar Kun began the Great Sith War. Ulic Qel-Droma, essentially Exar Kun's second in command, killed his own brother Kay during the Sith assault on the planet Vosis. Ulic was horrified by what he'd done and decided Exar Kun had to be stopped. He successfully led a Jedi strike team against Kun on Yavin. The Sith Lord's spirit was trapped and his Sith Empire collapsed. The Krath forces were scattered in the Outer Rim, the Mandalorians were defeated at the Battle of Onderon, and the Sith threat seemed to be ended. Around this time, a group of pirates called the Laurel Raiders were also hunted by the Jedi and the Hapes Cluster. Their removal gave rise to the matriarchal Hapes Consortium. The Mandalorians did not stay away for long. Mandalore the Ultimate formed the Neo-Crusaders, and taking advantage of the galactic devastation of the Sith Wars, began the Mandalorian Wars of 3995 to 3961 BBY. They began slowly taking fringe Republic worlds, taking advantage of Republic reluctance to fight back, until gathering enough momentum, territory, and material to strike at the heart of the Republic. The purging of the Cathar homeworld prompted the Jedi to support the Republic fleet. But after this initial response, the Jedi held back, urging caution and allowing the Mandalorians to continue their crusades almost unopposed. Some of the Jedi disagreed with the Council's caution. Led by Revan and Malak, these Jedi took command of the Republic war effort and through brutal tactics of their own, forced back the Mandalorians. The war ended with the destruction of Malachor V in a battle where Revan dueled and ultimately defeated Mandalore the Ultimate, turning the Mandalorians for the final time from contenders for galactic control into a series of mercenary clans. For the 3 years following the Mandalorian Wars, Revan and Malak gathered more power to themselves, following Rakatan star maps to a giant 3D printer called the Starforge, building a fleet out of Republic and Rakatan designs, initiating the Second Sith War from 3959 to 3956 BBY. Their first strike captured the primary Republic shipyard at Forost, even pulling in support from many who were already eager to support the champions who had so recently rescued the galaxy from the Mandalorians. Revan, after being captured and reprogrammed by the Jedi, rejoined the Order and defeated his former apprentice Malak, shutting down the Starforge before heading into the unknown regions in search of an unknown Sith threat. While this ended the Jedi Civil War and put the Sith into their own civil war, the next few hundred years would see the Sith and Republic both growing in power and fighting each other multiple times, including in the Great Galactic War from 3681 to 3651. There was a period where they even worked together, though, against the emerging threat known as the Eternal Empire, in a series of short but complicated political and military events. The Hapans had sealed themselves off from the galaxy around 3100 BBY, and after the final Alsakan conflict in 3000 BBY, the galaxy entered a rare millennium of relative peace, until the Fourth Great Schism within the Jedi led to the new Sith Wars from 2000 to 1000 BBY. This schism occurred when the Umbaran Jedi Master Phanius left the Jedi and emerged as the first Sith Lord seen in over 1,000 years, Darth Ruin. 50 other Jedi joined the merciless new Sith Lord, and the resulting conflict ended only once Darth Bane, who rose from the ranks of the Sith soldiers, realized the need for the Sith to reduce their numbers and play for power in a different way, ending the Sith Wars in 1000 BBY and instituting the Rule of Two with his apprentice Darth Zana. The Republic followed the war with the Ruusan reformations, which ended their standing federal military. The next 1,000 years was relatively peaceful, though in the background the Sith began building their power in secret. By the year 67 BBY, Darth Plagueis had become the new Lord of the Sith by killing his own master, Darth Tenebris. He took a young man named Palpatine from Naboo on as his own apprentice, Darth Sidious, and the two set the plan for the installment of the Sith in power over the Republic in motion. When Palpatine was elected Chancellor in 32 BBY, he killed his former master Plagueis. From behind the scenes, Palpatine orchestrated the devastating Clone Wars. In a galaxy hungry for order and security after 3 years of constant war, stretching from between 22 BBY to 19 BBY, he reorganized the Republic, which had stood for 25,000 years, into the Galactic Empire, brutally destroying the Jedi Order with the help of his new apprentice Darth Vader, the former Jedi hero Anakin Skywalker. This initiated a period of fluctuating galactic governments compared to the relative stability of the prior millennia. The new empire's repressive and harsh methods of quelling dissent galvanized its opposition under the leadership of Senators Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Garm Bal Iblis in 2 BBY, officially forming the Rebel Alliance after years of disorganized responses to Imperial authority. Vader's twin children, Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa, even became key figures within the rebellion. Leia was a central organizing figure, having been raised by Bail Organa, and Luke Skywalker was responsible for the destruction of the Empire's planet-killing superstation, the Death Star, at the Battle of Yavin. 4 years after Yavin, the Emperor died for the first time over Endor. His spirit escaped to the deep core via the technique of essence transfer, inhabiting a series of cloned bodies on the planet Biss. While he did slowly call various remaining Imperial forces towards him, the Empire and the rest of the galaxy began to crumble and fracture in the power vacuum. The rebellion formed the New Republic and fought many Imperial warlords, including Grand Admiral Thrawn 9 years after the Battle of Yavin, or ABY, and the return of Palpatine himself in 10 to 11 ABY, along with various other threats that had been held at bay by the Empire. They fought a protracted war against the Siruvi Imperium to force them back and stop any further Siruvi aggression, starting in 4 ABY, and they also fought the Duskin League in the Black Fleet crisis of 16 to 17 ABY. By 19 ABY, the Empire had been reunited through the efforts of Natassi Dalla and Gilad Pellaeon, but Pellaeon finally saw the futility of fighting on, and convinced the Moffs of the need to sign the Pellaeon-Garrison Treaty with the New Republic, ending decades of war between the forces of the Empire and the New Republic. 6 years later, the galaxy faced its biggest threat yet, the Yuuzhan Vong, a species who used living ships and had fled from their own galaxy thousands of years before. Much like the Mandalorian Wars 4,000 years earlier, the lack of willingness to fight yet another war hindered early organization and allowed the Vong to establish a foothold. The Vong easily crushed most of the galaxy, including elements of the unknown regions and Hutt space. This finally convinced the various forces of the galaxy to unite against the existential threat facing them. The New Republic and the Empire united with the Hapans and other governments to form the Galactic Federation of Free Alliances in 28 ABY, and through cooperation with the Chiss, the Hutts, and support from Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order, they were able to finally defeat the Vong and recapture their lost capital of Coruscant the following year, sending the remaining Vong forces to live on the living planet of Zonamas Seacot, and spending the next few years cooperating with Vong War Master Nash Choka to root out remaining cells of Vong resistance. While the Yuuzhan Vong War nearly wiped out galactic civilization, it brought a period with unprecedented galactic connections, beginning the integration of some unknown region societies into the greater galaxy, primarily the Chiss. In 35 ABY, these new connections nearly brought the galaxy into yet another massive war, as conflict sprung up between the Chiss and the Killiks. The Killiks, typically peaceful and without territorial ambition, had adopted a Jedi named Raynar Thul and 2 Dark Jedi into their hive mind after they'd been lost on a mission to the planet Merkir during the Yuuzhan Vong War. The integration of these Jedi caused the Killiks to care for individual lives in a way they hadn't before, and led to a population boom, expanding the Killik colonies until they encroached on Chiss territory. The war, known as the Dark Nest Crisis, ended with the death of the 2 Dark Jedi and the recapture of Raynar Thul by the Jedi Order. The wake of the Yuuzhan Vong War left many systems feeling a greater need to take care of their own defenses, some motivated by the lack of unified response under Borsk Fey'lya's government in the early parts of the Yuuzhan Vong War, and some like Corellia motivated by the desire for increased power for their own systems. The Hutts had once again begun building their own military, with Hutt warships becoming a common sight despite having been so rarely seen beyond the region known as Butana Hutta, or the Garden of the Hutts, since the Cataclysm. Many of these disaffected systems supported Corellia in a revolt against the Galactic Alliance in 40 ABY, pitting many heroes of the Rebellion era against each other as Corellia sought to succeed at the head of its own independent confederacy. Jacen Solo, the son of Leia Organa and her husband Han Solo, fell to the dark side, becoming Darth Caedus during this war, and installing himself as the leader of the Galactic Alliance. The war ended in 44 ABY when Jacen's sister Jaina killed him aboard his flagship named after their other deceased brother Anakin Solo, but the damage had already been done. The Confederacy was not reintegrated to the Alliance after the war, and the Imperial Remnant began establishing itself yet again as an independent empire, under the leadership of the young Jagged Fel, husband of Jaina Solo. Natassi Dalla, former Admiral of the Empire, was placed in the office of the Galactic Alliance Chief of State. At some point over the next century, the Confederacy was reintegrated with the Galactic Alliance, and the Empire developed under Jagged and Jaina's family line into the Fel Empire, with a parallel Jedi Order equivalent, the Imperial Knights, meant to serve the Imperial family. In 127 ABY, war once again reignited. A group of Sith led by Darth Krayt, who had been a Jedi named Asherad Het during the Clone Wars, had been biding their time in secret. A plan was being developed by the Yuuzhan Vong and Jedi to use Yuuzhan Vong technology to help restore worlds formerly devastated by war like Ossus, which would simultaneously hopefully rehabilitate the Vong's image across the galaxy. Krayt and his Sith sabotaged the project, and when the Jedi convinced the Galactic Alliance to support the Vong, there was widespread condemnation, with anger and fear prompting the Fel Empire to declare war. The Sith joined forces with the Empire, and after the Jedi refused to surrender, the Order was purged yet again. Emperor Roan Fel was overthrown and replaced by Krayt, beginning the Second Imperial Civil War in the year 130 ABY. Ultimately, the Empire and the Galactic Alliance's remaining forces in exile saw the need to work together. They were finally able to defeat Krayt, and the galaxy was once again unified, this time under Triumvirate of Leaders in 138 ABY. This triumvirate was made up of Maracia Fel, the descendant of Anakin Skywalker representing the Empire, Admiral Gar Stazi of the former Galactic Alliance, and Jedi Master Kukruk. The next year, the triumvirate faced an insurrection attempt from Darth Red and survived, after which Empress Maracia Fel further opened up the Imperial Knights, integrating them more with the Jedi's philosophy and ending the galactic timeline of Star Wars Legends as we know it. That's all for now. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If so, consider leaving a like or subscribing for more. If there's another topic you'd like to see me cover on the channel, please leave that in the comments as well.